Viva pessoal, bem-vindos a mais um BANGCAST. Hoje é um BANGCAST especial, como podem ver, somos uma multidão aqui. Para além dos convidados residentes, temos a Joana, que vai fazer a moderação, e temos uma convidada especial, a autora da série de emergência, Kate Dramis, que publicou A Maldição das Santas. Hello, Kate.
Hi.
Welcome to BANGCAST.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's our pleasure. As I was saying, we published your novel recently. Joana read it twice.
I did.
And she's going to moderate, and me and Luis and Bruno, I read your novel also, but I don't think Luis and Bruno had the time to read all the novel.
Not all, but I read a few chapters, yes.
Yeah. But they are authors. They are always curious to make some questions to the authors, to the strategies and the secrets of the writing. And but Joana will moderate, and I think she's our leader today. So Joana, how do you want to start this?
I think I'll start with normal author, but for you actually, like about you questions, and then the most writing based questions, I'll take them to the authors because I'm not one. So I think that's the best way to go.
We'll start with Kate.
Yes. I like to do the pop quizzes, as you know, because you already answered some of them. So
Yes.
Some are, again, the same questions, some are not. Favorite main character?
Ooh, like in my own book?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
I'll ask you about Lee Bardugo after, but for now it's your book. I know you.
I would have to go with Aya. Like,
Okay.
I have to. I don't know. I love all of the characters equally. So I feel like it's like being asked to pick a favorite child.
Yeah.
You know, like you can't do that. But if I had to choose, I would choose Aya.
Okay. Favorite secondary character?
Will and Aiden are tied for me. Like I love them both equally and in very different ways.
Okay. Favorite character to write about?
It really depends on the mood I'm in. So I have found that some characters I write really easily, consistently. I have found some characters I butt heads with, Aya being one of them, ironically, given she is the main character. There are times that
The most complex, yes, of course.
Yeah. And we don't think the same, so we don't react the same. So sometimes it takes me a little while to figure out what the heck she's doing and why she's doing it. So I would say that all of the characters were really fun to write, and different characters at different times. Like there were certain scenes that I just had a lot of fun with that were in a certain character's point of view that were fun for me to write.
What is your favorite wolf?
Oh, Tyr, for sure.
Perfect. Same. Favorite Lee Bardugo character?
Oh, Inej. Yes, Inej. Yes.
I'm a Nikolai
she's-
fan. I'm a
Are
Nikolai
you a
fan.
Nikolai?
Fantastic.
Nikolai is so
So
cool.
fun.
Yes, but like Inej has my heart. She's so cool.
I understand that. I like Nina as well.
Yes.
Favorite coffee drink?
I like, if I have to, I usually just do like plain coffee with hazelnut creamer. I'm pretty basic when it comes to coffee. But if I'm like feeling fancy, I'll get an oat milk latte, probably with hazelnut in it as well.
Okay. Favorite fruit drink?
Ooh, I don't know. I don't really drink those. I don't
Not
know.
orange juice?
No,
Those-
I'm not like a
Those
juice
fancy
fan.
pink drinks from Starbucks?
No, this is going to sound bad, but if I'm drinking a fruit drink, it usually has alcohol in it. So, like, does a margarita count? It has wine.
It does. I think it does. If it has
let's
fruit,
go-
it counts. I
let's
think
go
it's
with
fine.
that. Or like a Bellini.
Wine, for instance.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Favorite food?
Favorite food? That's a really great question. I like breakfast food. I'll eat breakfast any meal of the day.
Yeah, I like that.
It's so simple, but I love a good like scrambled egg sandwich on a bagel. It's good. It's
Avocado
delicious.
toast.
Yeah.
No, okay. That's enough of the copy quiz. Okay. Now about the book.
Okay.
Not many people read in Portugal, as Luis told you. So I couldn't gather as many questions as I probably wanted to. But I know that if I ask you something, then it goes for another question, and we will keep on speaking. So it's going to be fine. I was going to ask, first of all, because of your world building is complex, it's complete, has a lot of things. Will you ever think about writing about other characters, another saga, another trilogy in the same world? Like grab that world building that you had so much time put in and so much effort and grab that and I'm going to write another thing in this one.
Yes, I have. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. I'm going to say it, and then I'll just apologize if I get in trouble from it. But I actually have plans for a duology that I really want to write, and I can't talk about who it's about yet without giving anything away. So I'm just going to like keep my lips sealed. But I definitely like already from the beginning had plans of a spin-off duology that I think would be really, really fun to write. That I'm really excited about.
Have you already finished this trilogy altogether?
Not yet. So I'm in edits on book 2. I actually just got my edit letter yesterday. And it was good. There was like not a lot that I had. It's more like 75% there, which, you know, I was like, woo, thank goodness. And then I will go on to book 3. I'm going to take a brief pause in between just so I can reset my brain. But yeah, I'm working on book 2, finishing up book 2, and I'll be into book 3, and then hopefully a duology.
That one is going to be Curse of Sins, right?
Curse of Sins is book 2, yes.
May I ask you a question? Do you already know how it's going to end?
I do. I do know how it's going to end. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get us there. I finished book 2, and I was like, I love this. This is great. I've made a mess. So now I have to clean it up. So I know how it's going to end. I'm not 100% certain on how I'm going to get us to that ending. But, you know, that's part of the magic.
Okay. Do you think your second book is, well, most second books on trilogies are normally slower. People don't like them as much sometimes, most of the times. Do you think it's going to be slower than the first one, faster, fast-paced?
I would actually say it's faster. I think because a lot of the world building has already been done, you don't need that sort of introduction to the world. That's actually one of the things my editor and I have gone back and forth on is how much do we, you know, recap and putting people back into the world. And as an author, that's a part that I'm growing through is like, how do I find that balance between re-immersing people back in without being too, you know, like, here's all of the information. But I think in general, I think the book is faster than book 1. Okay. My books tend to be faster in the second half. Just in general, like it ramps up pretty quickly, and then, you know, all hell breaks loose. Oh, sorry, can I say that? Okay. Like, oh my gosh, can I say that?
I asked exactly the same thing in the beginning.
PG rating.
Oh gosh. So yeah, but I think in general, book 2 is definitely it's larger. It's significantly larger than Saints, and it's faster. It's darker. It's, you know, it's been compared to like it's the Empire of the trilogy. So it's very much it's all of the things.
How, as a writer, I understood that this is your first fiction experience, right? Are you being surprised by it? Are the characters surprising you? The plots, even yourself? Are you surprising yourself while you are writing it?
I am. I think everything about the journey has been a surprise, like from how the book got picked up to writing it to writing the second book. I'm constantly learning. There are constantly things that surprise me. I was surprised at how I was surprised at some of the bits of book 2 of how dark it got. I don't like gore. Like, I can't watch anything on TV that's gory. Like, it took me forever to watch Game of Thrones, which I loved once I finally like was able to do it. But it's just interesting. So I would like write this intense scene, and it wouldn't have the same effect on me as if I were, you know, like watching it on TV. And it was really interesting to be like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know my brain could go these places. But yeah, I think all of it honestly has been a surprise. Like I just constantly wake up every day and I'm like, I can't believe I get to do this.
Why would you pick a wolf out of all the animals?
Ooh, that's such a good question. My mom has always loved wolves. She's just always, always loved them. So they've always been like around artistically in my home. And then my middle dog is a husky German shepherd, and he looks like a little wolf. And so when it came time to like really write that scene, it kind of just came to me, like, and wolves were just kind of there in my head as this is, you know, the bonded creature. But when it came time to really make Tyr a character, he's actually based off of my middle dog, my little Duke.
That's really cute.
Yeah, yeah.
How long did it take you to write this first one?
It took me about a year. So I started it in October of 2020 and wrote like off and on for about a year. I finished it the next October. I got a freelance editor off of Reedsy to do a developmental edit report before I did anything with it, which was the best decision ever. She ripped it to shreds, which I needed. And then I rewrote it. And I want to say I went on submission. I signed with my agent in March and I went on submission in June. So all in all, it was about a year and a half from the time that I started to when I got picked up.
That's quite fast, I think.
Yeah.
A trick question for writers. Do you base your villains on people you don't like?
No, I don't. I do not. There aren't many people in my life that I don't like personally. Like I don't have a lot of beef with people like in my personal life. So I don't know. I don't like really have any of that. I do think though, if I were to write like a contemporary romance, then I would probably base it off of like an ex-boyfriend or something, you know, like some like bad character. But no, the only character that's based off of anyone, and it's very loose, is actually Tova. She's loosely based off of my best friend, and Tyr, who is based off of my dog.
That's a nice combo, I'd say. How long did you take to write the second book?
Oh man,
I know you were in the schedule, so
yeah. So it was supposed to be a year, but with how edits turned out on Saints and everything going on with that, I didn't really start writing until November. And I turned it in June. So it was about 6-7 months. It was really fast.
That was a lot of pressure.
Fast. Yeah, it was supposed to be due in April. And I told my editor, I was like, I can't, there's just too much of it. And it was really interesting because I was debuting at the same time. So I kind of felt like I was learning how to promote a book and learning how to write a second book at the same time. It was grueling, but in a good way. Like I feel all the better for it. I'm much better when I have a deadline, when I have some pressure. If you give me too much time, I'll just not do it until the end. So, yeah.
How would you describe your first book in a sentence? Not a long one, just like.
Ooh, I always describe it as knife to throat. Like I feel like that's just the whole
Fair
vibe
enough.
of it. Or like in Enemies to Lovers, knife to throat, high fantasy, epic adventure.
Did you? I feel that nowadays in the last few, I don't know, decade or something, there's a few tropes that become really installed in the minds of fantasy readers, and like enemy to lovers, and then do you feel pressure to write like that, like the tropes that you feel that they're being celebrated, or it just came to you?
So it came naturally for the most part. I actually didn't know very much about tropes. Like I knew there were things that tended to show up in books that I read that I liked, that I wanted to either put a twist on in Saints or evolve or like replicate. I did not know enough to know that those were tropes until I was like in it, and I was like, oh, this is trope B. I get it. Like this is something that people, you know, use. I would say that the pressure I feel is I will sometimes have readers reach out to me and they want a specific trope and I just ignore it because I'm just like, that's cool. But, you know, I would never, like, it feels very square peg round hole to force a trope into something where it doesn't belong. So I try to do it as natural as possible. I think the thing I feel more pressure on is there's a certain cadence to enemies to lovers fantasy that people expect. And if it doesn't perfectly mirror those expectations, there can be a little bit of a disconnect. And I think that is what I struggle with more, is kind of this, how do you take something that's been done so well and is so popular, make it unique, but also meet those expectations of readers, but also not just duplicate everything that's been done.
I
Yep.
agree, and I think you did it on this book because they are enemies in the beginning, but you don't really know why until you do, and everything makes sense then. It's like he's not doing anything terribly wrong. I've read some books that he's actually really a really bad guy, like terrible person. I hate him from the beginning, and then there is a simple reason for him to be doing all these bad things, and that annoys me
Yeah.
a lot. And it doesn't happen on your book, which I thought was perfect.
Thank
And
you.
I think people writing strong female characters is a thing that is almost necessary nowadays because of women empowerment and all that jazz. That I'm really glad that is, and I think it's perfect. And you do that really nice as well, because of all the female characters are actually quite strong, quite like have really big personality. They are independent. They know how to do their thing. They do not depend on anybody else. So I think that's really nice on your books.
Thank you. Yeah, it was something that I really wanted to play with. I think one of my favorite parts about writing Saints was getting to kind of flip what's the norm in a lot of fantasy books, where Will is very in touch with his emotions. I mean, he's a senseinos. He can actually feel and manipulate emotion. He's very in tune with his own emotions. And Aya is absolutely not. Like, Aya is very good at violence and very good at anger, and that's about
She's
it.
clueless.
Yeah, she is. And she's very cold. And I feel like typically we see the opposite. Like, we see a brooding male lead who like doesn't really talk about his emotions. And then we see the female lead who's, more into her emotions and teaches them how to feel. And I wanted to subvert that because I think that it's just interesting to explore a new dynamic and, kind of upend the norm in that way.
True. I like that we don't really have a grumpy sunshine trope. We have a grumpy.
Yeah, they're both very grumpy. They're both very grumpy and morally
Perfect.
gray. I mean, they both make really bad decisions.
Yeah.
And I think
But
that's
we all do.
normal. Yeah, exactly. And I think that going into book 2 as well, like it's been very interesting to watch their journey and to remember that like things don't change instantly between people. We don't go from 0 to 100. We don't all of a sudden start making every right choice. It's a journey.
About the world, you have quite a, I won't say complex, but there are some rules that when you start reading it, you kind of dive into a thing that is a lot of nuances and details. Did the world came to you already kind of developed, or were you developing it along the way as you wrote it?
So I started with the characters and a couple of scenes, and I had pieces of the world. And then I really had to sit down and define the world. So one of the things my agent had me do, actually before I was ever signed with her, is she sent me this document of like 50 questions to answer about your world. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I got this. I know exactly how the world is supposed to be. And then I sat on that document for like a month. And I was like, I don't know any of this. But it was really, really, really helpful because and you can find the questions anywhere online. So for writers who are looking to do world development, there's a ton of free resources there. And it's this full deep dive into how does the magic work, what are the laws, what are the different territories, how does it work differently across territories, and then really small random things like what do people do for fun in this country and what's taboo and what's not. And so I spent, I would say, about like 2 months really diving into the world and developing it and creating those rules. It did change as the book went on. So one of the things I did was I updated it when I was in edits with my editor because I was like, I'm going to need this roadmap in the future. But it was very much because it's so nuanced and so complex, I couldn't move forward with the story until it was really set in stone and I understood it. And I would actually say it probably bothers my team a bit because I'm really detailed with it. Like I will come up with scenarios that will never happen in the book, but I need to know that if this thing happened, what does it mean for the magic and like what does it mean for the politics and all of the traditions of the world?
when did you design the map?
So my sister, it's beautiful, isn't it? I love it so much. So my sister actually designed a version of that map when I went on submission. So I drew, I'm not an artist by any means in the traditional sense. So I drew a blob on a piece of paper and I was like, here's the map so you can understand where things are. And then I sent it to my sister and I was like, can you make this something better? Because this looks like a 4-year-old drew it. So she actually created a version of that map that we sent when we sent the book on submissions. When my agent sent the book out, that was actually a version of the map that went through. And then Michael Joseph and their amazing artist made an updated version to go.
We know that what makes a magical world work is the rules that you put on the map, because if everything was possible, you couldn't make any meaningful conflict out of it, and it would be a mess. How hard was it for you to create your rules of magic and your magical realm in a way?
I would say it was difficult at first because I kept looking for loopholes. Like I wanted it to be really firm. I wanted it to be tight. And so one of the interesting aspects of the magic system in this world is that you have some people who have magic who are Visia, and you have some people who are human. And so I had to really wrap my head around, well, what stops Visia from just controlling humans all the time? So there had to be, some morality there. And so I had to relate it to our world. Like, well, what stops people from just like going off and, doing whatever
We have
they
a
want
guest.
in our world?
We have a guest.
Okay. Oh my gosh, so cute. So cute. So I would say like once I got past that was probably the hardest part. But to your point exactly, I had to look at what problems could be solved just by the snap of someone's fingers, and how do we make it so those problems can't be solved so that we can have some actual, conflict in the plot.
Well, but Visia and humans have different beliefs. I'm not going to call it a religion. Maybe I should. But they have different beliefs. How did you create them?
Yeah, so I think it's more that Visia and humans have different beliefs based on their territory. So it's more based on where they live. And I really pulled on my own experience, like growing up in the church, and looking at like just the different levels of devotion and what it looks like. I mean, even within my own family, like I have some family members who are, very into going to church. I have other family members who are very spiritual. I know there's friends of different religions, etc. I have, friends that like aren't spiritual or religious at all. And so I took that and equated it to this magic system and how they view how magic is used and what that means for religion and devotion, because the magic is given from the gods. So it was very much looking through the lens of religious devotion and what that looks like in different kingdoms and why it's evolved the way it has, to kind of set the groundwork for how people view power and what their belief is.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Kate. George Martin, we are his publishers here in Portugal, and he already came twice to Portugal. And he always, when he speaks about the art of writing, he always says that there are two types of writers: the gardener and the architect. I don't know if you ever heard this. The gardener is the guy who lets his writing flows. He doesn't know exactly where he's going, so he's improvising. He's creating in the moment. Yes, he's planting seeds, sees how the things go. And then there's the architect who plans everything almost to the smallest detail. He knows how many chapters, what will happen in each chapter, like an architect that is building a house. Do you feel you are a gardener or an architect, or maybe a mix of both?
I would say I'm a mix of both. I tend to start with gardening. So I have to have kind of an idea of a scene or something I'm really passionate about or a concept to start. If I don't, it's just like I could plot a book, but if I'm not excited about it, I won't actually write it. But then there comes a point where I have to have a loose plan. So I actually follow V.E. Schwab did a really great panel on the story corpse method, and they talked about mapping out like the bones and plotting those bones and then filling it in, and you build basically the corpse of the story. And that has been very helpful for me, because if my plan is too set, then I get really stuck and I get writer's block, because I know exactly where I'm supposed to go and I'm like, oh, this isn't fun anymore, or a scene's not working. But if I don't have a plan, then I will just wander in the desert forever. And I'll just write and write and write. So I kind of do a mix of both, where I have the big milestones mapped out. I know where I'm going. I'm not sure how I'm going to get there. And what I like about that approach is that it leaves room for magic, as I like to say. So, for example, in Saints, there's a scene between Aya and Will in a tavern in Trahir. That scene was never supposed to exist in the book. I wrote it right before I went on submission, and it actually ended up changing the entire flow of Act 2. And had I not left room for that, it would be a very different book. So I think it's a little bit of both for me. I have to like kind of lean into it and let it flow, but I have to know generally where I'm going, or else it'll never get done.
Was it a dance scene?
It was the dance scene.
Oh,
It was the dance scene. Yes.
okay. I get it. I like that one.
I like that one too.
Joan is a specialist.
No, not quite, but I really like that scene. That I think that was really important for their relationship, even though neither of them could actually understand what happened. It did, so that was important. I'm not going to say anything because I can't spoil. But yeah, everybody should read the book. That's all I'm saying. Or finish the book if you haven't.
On this note, on this note, what is overall your writing schedule? How do you manage between doing these things in these bits of promotion and writing?
Yeah, it kind of depends on what's due. So I'm a morning person, so I usually write in the mornings. I'm no good to anyone after like 2 p.m. my time. But usually I like wake up, I go through, I do like a social media spin through. I look at like, what do I have to answer, etc. I'm getting better at not feeling like I have to respond to every comment and every DM, which I'm very proud of myself for. Usually I'm like on there for hours and it's just not sustainable anymore. So I do like a little bit of marketing in the morning, a little bit of admin work, and then I really sit down and I start writing. If I'm on deadline, it's mostly just writing. So there's not much marketing going on. And if there is, I'm just repurposing stuff that I've already used in the past, which is actually an interesting like obstacle now, because the book is out. I've basically teased everything I could possibly tease. And now I'm looking at, okay, so how do I get people excited for The Curse of Sins, but not spoil anything from The Curse of Saints? So I have a feeling it'll be more writing than marketing for a little while.
How much time in the day do you reserve? Do you put aside for social media and all that, and all the marketing you need?
Again, it kind of depends on what's going on. I mean, I would say probably about 2 hours of my day is pretty scheduled towards marketing. And marketing in terms of like, I love talking with people. So I consider myself very approachable online. I'm like, I always tell people like, DM me, I'd love to talk to you. I think the best part of what I do is getting to connect with readers, and I try to connect with as many as possible. So I would say it probably takes me about 2 hours every day of like just responding, planning, making sure, people feel seen and heard, planning the next whatever couple days of content, etc.
And how do you think that affects your sellings, for example?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't have numbers on that, but I have noticed that the more people I respond to, the more people are like, oh, I'm going to pick up the book, or like, oh, or are going to reach back out and tell me what they thought about it, etc. I have to be mindful of when I'm doing it. So for example, like I just recently blocked my own hashtag on TikTok. I don't look up my name because, those are also reviewer spaces, and I want to make sure that reviewers feel safe to leave their reviews. And I also don't want to see it. So I'm just like, there has been a shift for me, and like, I have to be really mindful of using that time appropriately and making sure that I'm using it to connect with readers and I'm not just scrolling. But it definitely, I've noticed there's definitely more engagement around I'm going to pick up the book if I'm talking to people.
There's a saying in Portugal that says that if the eyes can't see, the heart can't feel. That's kind of what you do with reviews. Like you don't
Yeah.
want to see them because
Yes.
it might be good, it might be bad. So my
Yeah.
heart doesn't feel anything, and
Exactly.
I'll remain
Exactly.
just like I am. Go
Yes.
ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to ask if you're doing that on your own, if you're basically finding your own way on social media and promotion on your own, or if you get some help from the publisher and some guidelines and such.
No, I mean, my publisher is very supportive. I had an audience before I was picked up by my publisher. And so what I love is when I was picked up, they were basically like, we don't want to impact what you're doing. Like you keep doing what you're doing and we'll supplement it, by helping you out. So I was very fortunate enough. I actually came from a marketing background. So before I was a full-time author, I owned a copywriting and coaching agency. So I was constantly, I used this software that we're on for my business. So I was very like into the digital marketing space, the social media space. So I came in with that knowledge of like how to build an audience, how to talk to people. I'm very comfortable on camera, etc. So I really just kind of use the tools that I gained in my career to keep it going.
And did you write your own copy?
I do. Yeah, I write my own copy. Yep, I do. So my website's written by me. There are some things that I'll hand off and be like, can you write this instead? It's like all my social media captions, all of that's written by me. One of the things I'm working on is like the blurb for the book. I find that to be very difficult. So I'm kind of trying to push that off because I'm so close to it where I'm like, hey, can y'all write this instead? Because I'm so close to it. But yeah, anything like my emails, my social media, all of that, that's all written by me.
That might not be the best thing in the future.
Yeah, one of the
You
things
might need to get something else.
yeah. One of my first hires will be an assistant. That's for sure. Who can
That's
kind
what
of
I was
at
going to
least
say.
help me. I mean, I can still write it, but like at least help me monitor it and kind of go through it. I like know my sister is amazing. She is definitely like gunning for the job for sure. She's always like she comes with me whenever I'm traveling for book stuff. She's always keeping tabs on the hashtag because I don't look at it. Like just giving me a here's how the water feels. So yeah, which is helpful because then I don't have to, constantly be monitoring. So it's very nice.
Otherwise, you wouldn't leave your computer or social media.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to smell everything, you
Yes.
wouldn't leave. You wouldn't
Yes.
have to write. You wouldn't have time.
Exactly.
In the old days, new writers used to start by doing short stories, appearing on magazines, to getting their name out there. It seems that nowadays young writers go straight for a novel. And that seems to be a huge leap, at least for someone who hasn't published yet. Um, you did that, but you had also the copywriting, the experience. What do you feel? What are your thoughts about that? This situation, was it a daunting task?
At the time it wasn't daunting because I didn't really know where it was going. Like I knew that I wanted to be a published author. That's always been a dream of mine. But at that point, I just wanted to write a book. Like I've been writing for my whole life, but I've never finished anything. So I have a lot of, half-written things. I'm pretty sure the only thing I've ever finished outside of this was like a banned fan fiction that no one will ever read because it's embarrassing, that I wrote with a friend, like back when I was in middle school. And so I think that it was less daunting just because I wanted to do it. And there was no consequence if I didn't, right? I mean, except for letting myself down. I think that what was more daunting was book 2. So I was like, okay, well, I've done it once. Now I have to do it again and again and again. But I think that the writing styles are very different, to be honest with you. So like, for example, being a copywriter definitely helps me write better, but it's different writing than you would write in a novel. It was actually one of the feedback pieces I got on my developmental edit report was my writing was a little too polished because I was bringing my copywriting brain over to the book. And it's very difficult to switch from, short, choppy sentences to kind of a longer flowing prose. So yeah, I think whatever way someone can get their foot in the door is a very helpful way. And I also think that there's something to be said for going for the thing you want to write. So for me, it was the fantasy book and I really wanted to write it. And I was less concerned about how do I get my name out there and more concerned about like, can I actually just do this thing that I really want to do? Can I finish the thing I really want to finish?
I think it's really rewarding to finishing something, even if it is reading a book or writing a book or making house chores. I don't know. I think finishing something
Yes.
is really rewarding, but finishing a book, which takes hours and hours and days and weeks and months, is probably even more so.
I would agree with you. I have a video of when I finished the very first draft of The Curse of Saints, and I'm literally in tears. I also cried when I turned Sins into my editor because I was just like, yes, like I did it. Oh my gosh. And there's something about like hitting send and it's no longer like in your court for a little bit. It's such a good feeling.
This is
And
not my problem anymore.
Everyone print out their book, because the first time I printed my book and I saw it, I was like, this is a massive stack of I did that. I wrote all of those words. So I think that like taking time to reflect, it's such a good feeling. It's like, wow, all of this lives in my head and it now is an actual thing.
It's an achievement, a really big one, I'd say.
No, it is one of the sensations of a lifetime, and I hope you have more and more and more, because I still have that feeling after several books I've written. I still have that feeling, even those I never published. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They still gave me a buzz, and it's always that feeling of accomplishment is so different. I think most people that never go through it don't know how you feel.
Yeah.
And you also and there is a kind of dread as well, because now people are gonna see what really goes in my head.
Oh my gosh, yes. I remember being like, when I got the news that Michael Joseph wanted to sign me, I was so excited. And then maybe like 3 hours later, it dawned on me that people were going to actually read the book. And I was like, oh my God, like, what have I done?
Façam like, subscrevam, partilhem e comentem. Sejam épicos.
I often talk about a phenomenon that I call the seizure syndrome, but basically is a feeling that I've talked to several authors that I think also feel the same. I don't know if you do. The seizure, it's basically that feeling of dread and of weight that happens as closer to the end you're getting. Of course, in the end, it's a release. It's fantastic, but as closer to the end you're getting, it starts getting more and more difficult, and it starts to get there's a weight that you feel on your shoulders. I don't know if you felt this, or if this is something that.
I haven't. I actually find the end of the book the easiest part to write, which surprises me. And I thought maybe Saints was just a fluke and it just like happened on Saints because, I don't know. But it happened again on Sins, where like I generally write the final act of the book in about a week. Like it's the fastest I write. It's the easiest. I would say the weight typically comes for me before I turn something in. So I will finish it, and then I'm looking at it and I will go through it and fix some parts. So it kind of happens twice. It happens right before I turn it in and I'm like, is this the best I can do? Is this it? And then it also happens right before I get to Act 3, and then it kind of flows out of me. But it's that kind of like, okay, has everything lined up to get me to where I need to go? And is it really time to, put pedal to the metal and take it through the end? Or like, have I messed up and this can't go forward?
No, but what's going to have in book 3 is the fact that you're not going just to finish a new book. You're going to finish a whole set of books, so it's a double reward for you. Right?
Yes, and I would imagine that there's probably also going to be a little bit of sadness in that for me. Like I can't even wrap my head around the idea of like saying goodbye to the series, and the fact that I'm almost there already like feels just so strange. Like it's just really strange.
Do you read your past work, or you just leave it there and you never pick it up again?
Um, I read Saints so much during the editing process that once it came out, I was like, no, I'm not going to read it. I was going to read it going before I went into edits for Sins, but I just didn't have time. But I don't like not read it because I don't want to. I just could probably quote every single word of at least the first act. But I did take time between but when I had sent it in, I was waiting on edits. I did reread it, and I actually ended up loving it. Like I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good! Like this is really really good.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, because
Yeah.
I have that guilty pleasure as well. I often go to my past writings and read them again, especially when I know that somebody I know is reading that book.
Mhm.
I always feel like, let me read at least this scene or that scene, and it's a guilty pleasure many times, because many times I would say, oh, I didn't know I wrote this so well.
Yes. And I was so worried that if I did it, like I would before it came out. So I actually didn't even when I got my past pages, I didn't even look at them. I made sure that everything that I had tweaked, because I was correlating two drafts, so I made sure that everything I had tweaked during sensitivity reads and those reports was implemented. And then outside of that, I was like, listen, typos are on y'all. Like I'm done because I had read it so many times. And then I told myself I wasn't allowed to read it until it was out, because if I found something that I didn't like, I was going to try to change it, and production was going to be so mad at me. So I refused to open any document. Like I wouldn't look at it, I wouldn't read it. If I was trying to remember something that happened while I was drafting Sins, I would call my sister and be like, "Can you tell me what happened in this chapter? Because I can't look at it."
But would you listen to the audio version of your book?
I'm not a huge audiobook fan, but I think I would, just to hear the different voices. Like I would love to hear like how it all came together. I just can't audiobooks for me, I get so distracted, like it can't hold my focus. So I don't know if I'd listen to the whole thing, but I definitely want to listen to portions of it. I've listened to a bit of, I think a couple chapters of the US edition, and I'm waiting to get a copy of the UK edition. So, but I actually listened to a snippet. I had the voice actors audition, and I got to pick the scene that I wanted them to do. So I did Aya and Will's first scene together. So I got to listen to that, and I played it on repeat like 500 times. It was so cool.
As writers, this is a question for everybody here except for me. Are you guys more judgy about your work while you're working on it, and then it gets published, and then you reread it, and then you are not so judgy? You're like, oh, this is actually really nice, but I didn't think it was this good when I was writing it. Did you ever feel that? Thinking your work isn't as good as it actually is while you're writing it.
Well, I don't know if that's your judgment. I don't know. I'm always very judgmental about my writing when I'm writing it, and I go back and I look at it over and over again and edit it and rewrite it. I do much less rewriting afterwards than when I'm actually writing, because I'm constantly writing and rewriting what I wrote before. That's probably why the last chapters are less rewritten and less edited, because they're the less read.
You didn't have the
But
time.
yeah, but yes, and I have one something that happens to me, which is my beginning is never good. It takes me a long time. I usually end up rewriting the beginning and putting something completely different, and just a lot of pages afterwards. I have a working project right now. I already at page 90 or something, and yesterday I woke up and I said, wait a minute, the beginning has to be something completely different. And I actually rewrote the beginning, and I'm satisfied with it for now.
For now.
For now, because it's going to be a 400-page novel. And But yes, it's more often afterwards, even a year afterwards, that I reread my work and I say, wait, well, that's good. I didn't know that I did this. Because while I'm writing it, I'm very judgmental.
I'm a bit biased. It depends. Usually, since I'm more of a gardener than an architect, usually go with the flow. But then the bits that I think that need to be changed, okay, I don't really like this. Can be a sentence, can be just a sentence, but usually is a scene that takes the story to a point which I'm not really liking it, and then I feel that I need to change it, and I can say, okay, I'll change it afterwards, and then I just nudge the story back to what I wanted it to be, and I'll do it afterwards. But if those bits accumulate, that comes to a point which I need to go back and just redo the whole thing in order to feel that I'm going where I would like to go. That doesn't mean that the story should not surprise me, obviously, and that's the best bit of it. We should be the first readers of what we are writing, and we should be the most enthusiastic about it. Because if we're not, then I don't think anyone else will be. Anyway, looking back at what I've done in the past, I have usually one of three experiences. Either I don't like it, and then I go, "Ugh, no, what have I done? What have you done, Luis, of the past? You should get a smack for this." Either I liked it, and then I may say, "Oh, I will never write like this again," or most often I see errors, and the errors are the worst because every time I open one of my old books, somehow it lands on a page where there is a typo or something like that, and I say, "Okay, do not go back to the past. They are right. Never go home again."
So you are still judgy
I'm very judgy
every time from beginning to
every
today.
time, every
Always
time,
judgy. Okay.
even to the future.
Well, because I write what I like to read. So, to be honest, when I pick, for example, my first novel, who has maybe 2.5 years now, and I start to pick some pages and read some things, I really take pleasure in it because I almost forgot I wrote it. And it surprised me a little bit because I almost forgot it. And it's the kind of thing I want to read. So when you write what you like to read, I think there is always some pleasure in diving to old works. But well, we have to finish this. Kate,
Kate hasn't answered yet.
Oh, I was just going to say, I agree. I write what I like to read. And so I think sometimes I impress myself. Like I'll read it and I'm like, wow, that's so good. And I get really excited. My like whole marketing strategy actually didn't start as a marketing strategy. It was just me reacting to my own scenes, which sounds really cocky. But I just like it. Like I like what I write. I like the characters. So, I mean, I definitely judge it, and I try not to read it once it's out because I don't want to find mistakes, and I can't fix it now, so it's out there. But I do enjoy it.
okay, and Kate, if our listeners, our people who are watching us, if they were thinking, should I give it a try to the Curse of Saints? What would you say? How do you recommend your novel? There's a cover.
Yes.
What would you say to convince them give it a try to this book?
I would tell them that if they're into morally gray characters and fantasy in a very slow burn but intense romance, then this book is definitely for them. It's exciting. It's intense in some places. And it also has just some undertones of self-reflection that I think everyone would find helpful. So I would definitely say, check it out.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you
That's all
soon.
right.
Thank you so much. E pessoal, muito obrigado aí em casa por nos acompanharem. Foi um prazer ter-vos connosco. E daqui a 15 dias estamos de volta para mais um BANGCAST. Obrigado e até breve.